This week, as we all know, marks 16 years since the expulsion from Gush Katif and the northern Shomron. In preparing for today's program, we debated with ourselves whether we would focus solely on remembering the travesty and the tragedy, or if we would focus on going back in a way, B'poel Mamish, a way that brings us back, first in our minds, believing in the possibility and the reality that we can and we will go back, and also shooing away the naysayers who say we can't. And then secondly, in our heart, with love and with unity. And finally, on the ground, going back bigger and even better, because why not? Going back to Gaza and reopening the northern Shomron communities that were closed in 2005 is a win-win for everyone. First and foremost, security under full Israeli control and sovereignty protects lives, all lives, Jewish lives and even Arab lives. Giving the green light for Jewish communities to go back, to rebuild, and for new ones to start up in the Shomron and in Judea will not only relieve the housing crisis in Israel, but will also be a boon to Israel's economy. And listen up, Unilever, you can count on Ben & Jerry's ice cream sales in Israel and Yasha in particular to quadruple, so take that. Now we'd like to formally begin our program with Rabbi Mendy Mirocznik. We're pleased to introduce him. He is the Executive Vice President of Igud HaRabbonim, and he joins us once again in discussing the topic, going back to Gaza, Al-Pi Torah and Shulchan Orech, according to Jewish law. Rabbi Mirocznik joins us via video.
Thank you, Mrs. Adelstein. It's an honor and a privilege to be here today to discuss the concept of Shleimus Haaretz. I was asked in particular to discuss the concept of Shleimus Haaretz of the Rabbi as it pertains to returning to Gush Katif, to Gaza. A brief historical note: under the prime ministership of Ariel Sharon, Gush Katif was evacuated and dismantled and remains till this day a desolate area. The issue that arises, should the Israelis reoccupy, repossess Gush Katif, Gaza, and other areas in the West Bank, Yehuda, and Shomron? To understand how the Rebbe would approach it, we have to understand the fundamental concept of Shleimus Haaretz. As I previously noted and discussed, a story which I heard from Rabbi Posner, a Chashuv Chassid, who was a member of the Igud HaRabbonim, the Rabbinical Alliance of America. The story goes back to the 1940s, when a discussion came up in Eretz Yisrael in Israel, whether or not to make a government, a memshalah. At that time, the English were taking away the weapons, the ammunition from the Jews. At that time, the Jews were living under the shadow of the Holocaust and how Hitler, Yamach Shemo, destroyed 6 million of our brothers and sisters in Europe. The Rebbe said, we have Jews living in the Holy Land, and they need to be protected. You need to form a government that follows halacha, a government that follows Torah principles and Torah concepts. And a government to be successful has to follow the concept of Shleimus Haaretz, that pikuach nefesh, putting people in danger and not living safe, can never happen. The government has responsibility to make sure its citizens, its people are safe 24 hours a day. And the concept was predicated upon halacha and Shulchan Orech, which we discussed a few times, that if the enemy comes to Israel on Shabbos Kodesh, even if it's Shabbos Yom Kippur, and they demand the tax of teven or kash, of fodder or of grains, instead of giving that tax, we are commanded to amass an army, to assemble the army, and to wage war on the enemy and to destroy them. Because the concept of Shleimus Haaretz is that we never allow to show weakness. We have to show strength and the ability to defend ourselves. This is the concept, the common thread that has directed the issue of Shleimus Haaretz since the establishment of Israel in 1948 through today. Now, unfortunately, the Shleimus Haaretz concept has come under attack. Many times people have felt we should make all type of peace plans and considerations. But the problem with the peace plans and considerations are politics change, administrations change, platforms change, but the Torah Kedosha of Shleimus Haaretz remains one constant basis. In the 1960s, after the Six-Day War, after 1967, Yigal alone came up with a peace plan. The peace plan called for a certain perimeter, let's call 30% of the land, which became established as settlements, should be used as a safety parameter around Eretz Israel. And he said, no matter what, Yerushalayim and that parameter, the perimeter has to remain settlers and strong. Yitzhak Rabin, when he was the prime minister, encouraged the first go around in the 70s that the settlements are important to the security and safety of Eretz Israel. Now, today, even when Trump was president, his deal of the century also called for, possibly, the perimeter of that 30% of land to remain in our hands. At a base, we see that even those who want to negotiate land believe there has to be a presence, a Jewish presence, at some minimum base. Our issue is the entire thing has to remain in Jewish hands. It's part of our national homeland, our historic land that Hashem gave to us, to our forefather, Avner, and Yaakov. And the second issue is, from a practical point, is the issue of safety and security, and the issue of understanding that by making any concessions on return of land, we are placing security of Eretz Israel in danger. So, of course, the Rebbe also warned, if we have a failed policy of appeasement, there'll come a day there'll be war and there'll be future occupation. So in order to prevent catastrophe, in order to prevent needless war, in order to cut down on casualties, immediately an area like Gush Katif should be taken, reoccupied, given back to its lawful possessors, the settlers who were there, and allow the economy and the culture to thrive and to make it greater than it was prior for being dismantled. This is a very painful concept, but it's something we have to take a very hard look at before we have further difficulties. You know, recently the BDS movement has struck Eretz Israel. Ben & Jerry's has declared they're not going to make sales in Yehuda Shomron and East Yerushalayim. It hurts very much. But historically speaking, there's always been a Jewish yishuv, a Jewish presence in Yehuda Shomron and East Jerusalem. From the time the second base of Midrash was destroyed, Arahiyom and Zed till now, on July of 2021, there always has been a Jewish presence in Eretz Israel, Gaza, Yehuda, Shomron, Jewish heartland. You know, I'm going to conclude. We just observed Tisha B'Av. May Hashem have Rahmanis that next year Tisha B'Av should be a Chag, a Simcha with rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash. In the Tochacha, the Chumash in Leviticus discusses what will happen by destruction, when Hashem Yisbarach will be disappointed with the sins of the Jewish nation, and the land shall become fallow. And when the Bible discusses the land shall become fallow, the Rashi and other great commentators explain that the land waits for the Jewish nation like a husband waits for a wife to his return. And upon the return, you'll see the blessings in the land. So too is Eretz Israel. We're living in a gullus right now. We're waiting for Mashiach to come. But the land is holy. And we see miracles in Eretz Israel because the land is waiting for its lawful occupants, the Jewish nation, from the four corners of the world to come home. And by going back into Gush Katif, not only will we send a message to terrorists and to other wrongdoers that Israel is strong, we are also making a simcha in the land that its lawful inhabitants, the Jews, have come home, returned home to enjoy the land. One other thing I want to comment, an issue came up. How could anybody that doesn't live in Eretz Israel have the audacity to comment on the situation? At first blush, it's a very good question. I want to respond that the world is making one mistake when it comes to Gaza and the West Bank and to the Shtachim, the liberated territories. And as an American, we have experienced 9/11. As an American, we have experienced the rise of terror in this country, fear. There is no secret that Gaza, and especially the Gaza Strip, has tunnels, and is possibly is one of the world's leading capitals, sadly enough, in terror. You name the organization, from Al-Qaeda to Hamas to Hezbollah, you name the terrorists, they have a home in the Gaza Strip. And the more Israel makes concessions to the Gaza Strip, and the more we weaken a Jewish presence, not only are we placing Israel in danger, we're placing, God bless the United States of America and the Western world, in danger. Therefore, it's very important that as long as we can right now to mitigate the damage of Oslo, we could mitigate the damage of mistakes we've done in the past, is to realize those errors. And one way by fixing it, by correcting the past, is by reoccupying, repossessing Gush Katif, making whole, apologizing to all the victims who were displaced, and returning it to his glory. May Hashem have Rahmanas on us. We will be successful. Again, I thank you, Mrs. Adelstein, and your wonderful committee for your dedication to the Rabbi, dedication to Shleimus Orech, and this chus may Mashiach come nowadays. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Mirocznik. Excellent as always. You know what? It's about time someone came out and said it. Yes, we do need to go back to Gaza. Yes, that is the halacha. Yes, Torah provides us with the answers, the direction that we need to do things right. So before I introduce my next guest, I wanted to share with everyone, go back in time to 2005. That summer, my family and I spent the summer in my hometown in Buffalo. And while there, I was introduced to our local town councilman, Bill Kindle, whose daughter, Yehuda Shamroth, lives in Beit Shemesh, if anyone knows her. And Yehudis, by the way, give a little shout out there. After the disengagement, Yehudis was instrumental in opening up a Kala fund for Gush Katif brides whose families were suddenly impoverished. No homes, no businesses, all their income shot, not even a normal place to live in. And to her credit, she was able to raise a lot of money and help Gush Katif Kalas get married that year and the year after. So Mr. Kindle understood very well what was going on, and he was more than happy to let us use the steps outside Town Hall in Williamsville, New York, a little suburb of Buffalo, so that I could hold a weekly press conference in the 3 weeks leading up to the expulsion. And on the night before that horrible day, we decided that we would all get together in the local library, again, thanks to Councilman Kindle. And we all gathered, everyone from Chabad, from Young Israel. And of course, we invited the press, but no surprise here that they were disinterested and no one showed up. So we were sitting there and we all felt very, discouraged. We felt alone. And Rabbi Greenberg, the rabbi of Chabad, turned to us and he said, you know what, don't be discouraged, because what matters is that it matters to us. And there's nothing more important than Achdus and Ahavas Yisrael done b'simcha, without falling into despair, as the way to turn things around and to bring true peace upon the land. Well, the next day, as we all watched on television or wherever we were, watching the army drag people out was unbearable. And I couldn't help but think to myself, well, maybe it matters to us, but it doesn't look like it matters to anybody else. Until later that day, I stopped into the local grocery store with my girls to pick up some things for Shabbos. And this older Jewish woman walked up to me and she whispered, she said, I think it's just terrible what they're doing in Israel. And then she walked away very quickly. So the first thing I thought was, well, it's nice to know we look identifiably Jewish. But then I thought, well, why is she whispering? And I thought about it a little bit more, and I realized that this woman represents the vast silent majority of our fellow Jews that agrees with us, that it does matter to them, feels the same way. So Gush Katif, we are here for you. The vast majority of Klal Yisrael is behind you and wants to see you go back. And with that, I would like to introduce our first guest speaker, who is Laurence Beziz from Mercaz Katif. And she is also the project coordinator for, Mercaz Katif, which is the Gush Katif Heritage Center. And welcome, Laurence. And why don't you tell us all about your life in Gush Katif and what Mercaz Katif does, and about your efforts to raise national awareness and responsibility. Welcome, Laurence.
All right. Thank you. Good evening from Israel, although over at your place it's a little bit in the afternoon. It's a real pleasure to know that the story of Gush Katif goes on even beyond the ocean, and that people in Crown Heights talk about us, talk about Gush Katif and this issue, this important issue. I just left. I was at the Gush Katif Heritage Center, our visitor center, and we had a group now from Florida. So I feel that I'm continuing Florida, Crown Heights, and it's a real pleasure to be able to tell that story. My name was Laurence. I was born and raised in France. I lived in France until I was 16 years old, and we moved for a couple of years due to the relocation of my father for his work. We moved to Los Angeles for a couple of years. And somehow during all these years, either in France or in the States, I was educated in Jewish Zionist schools. I went to a Jewish youth movement, Zionist youth movement. And somehow at the age of 20, even though my family was in France and in the States, I realized that my place was in Israel. And if I'm already in Israel, I just was like a wandering Jew for a couple of years. But then after a certain period of time, I realized that if I want to be in Israel, I want to do also something that is meaningful, that is significant in the life of the state of Israel. And this is the reason why we decided to move to Gush Katif. It was really a privilege. I lived there for 19 years. We were farmers, so very close to Eretz Israel, to the land of Israel. It was a miracle waking up in the morning and being able to work actually the land of Israel and make that huge prophecy of our prophets, but also this vision of Ben Gurion to reflourish the desert. During those years, those 19 years, we saw also, we were part of a large community. It was important being part of that community. We had the feeling that we were doing something special for the state of Israel, for the land of Israel. And this was at the end of 2003 when Prime Minister Sharon announced of his plan. For us, it was really like an earthquake. We didn't realize that this announcement would be by Sharon, who was a friend of Yehuda, Shomron, and Gush Katif, of all of Yesha's communities. And we started this public struggle in order for our voice to be heard. And it was important for us to make people realize that we were not fighting at any moment for my nice little house, for my nice little greenhouse. They were really nice, but we were fighting for the land of Israel. This was our main issue, because we said, okay, we can transfer agriculture to any place, and we can say, okay, it's bad for the economy, but okay, we'll transfer agriculture to another place. People can be transferred, but the one thing that we should hold on and fight for is the land of Israel, and this was our motto during the entire public struggle. And if the first speaker, Rabbi, I don't remember his name, I don't know, but if we're talking about going back to Gush Katif, we're at the Gush Katif Heritage Center. We're raising this awareness, the consciousness. It's important. We saw the example of Yamit. Very few people spoke about Yamit. There is a very, very small center in the south of Israel talking about Yamit. And if you go in the street and speak about Yamit, almost no student will know exactly what happened. But if you speak about Gush Katif, and we saw that in the last four political elections and what happened during these two past years, every now and then someone mentions what the politicians did or did not do in Gush Katif. Gush Katif stays in the awareness of our political leader, of the people in Israel. I'm not saying it's only because of us, but I think also it was important to establish our center, to know that there is a place that we can visit, that we educate children, that we have schools coming, soldiers that are coming to our place, visitors from outside the country before the coronavirus. But also now we are starting to host groups from outside the country. And what our main goal is, first of all, to make people realize that there was Gush Katif. Gush Katif was established because of three main reasons. The security reason, in order to be a buffer zone between us and the Arab population. The second, and I mentioned this before, to develop this beautiful agriculture and this beautiful area, and to be able to really make that prophecy come true and see Israel being like a flourishing place, and bringing us a lot of pride. And the third reason is because we have ancient roots in that area. The land of Gar is the land of Abraham, of Isaac. Isaac dug wells in this region. We saw throughout the history of the Jewish people, we see a presence in that specific area. We have roots during the period of the Maccabim, of the Hasmoneans, and throughout the Talmud. We were talking about Kfar Aza. And so we have a place there because this is part of Eretz Israel, and we have very, very strong roots throughout all the generations. So this is what we're trying to tell the people. And two other basic things that are important. The first is national responsibility, that as citizens of the state of Israel, we have responsibility towards the state of Israel. I'm making a very big difference between the state, that entity which is the state of Israel, and for which Jews yearn for 3,000 years to go back and to have a state of Israel, and to see that we have a prime minister and a president and a Knesset. So in order to preserve that entity which is the state of Israel, we had to really know that there are borders that we wouldn't cross in order to be able to keep our society together. And even though that there are gaps between what I believe and the other believes, this is not a reason to have a war between brothers. And we're proud that the fight in order to keep Gush Katif, the struggle to keep Gush Katif, didn't lead to a war between brothers. And so this is the second thing, our responsibility as citizens to this entity, which is the state of Israel, and to the IDF, to the soldiers and to the army of Israel. And the thing that we generally finish with at our center is also that amazing power of the Jewish people, the Jewish nation throughout the ages, to be able to carry on those broken pieces, this trauma, but also to be able to look forward, to know that we have a job, we have something to do here in Israel to rebuild new communities, to rebuild the Ityashvut wherever it can be, if it's at the Egyptian border, if it's in the Golan, if it's in the Jordan, next to the Jordan River, the valley. If it's in the Galilee, if it's in any place where we can make a difference, where we can bring people to live and to settle there, this is also important. And from the 21 different communities that existed in Gush Katif, we have now 22 different communities throughout Israel that bring the word of Gush Katif, bring that word of hope, of knowing that we are continue to build here in Eretz Israel until we are able to go back to Gush Katif. But we are laying all the basis to our going back to Gush Katif and to all the places that are important to the Shlemut Haaretz. So this is our purpose. We invite you. We're located between Ashkelon and Ashdod. Whoever comes to Israel, it will be a pleasure to host you and to tell you a lot more than those 10 minutes, 10 important minutes. And this is really a pleasure to be able to tell our story. Even if it's a hard story, it carries a lot of hope and better future for the state of Israel and for Am Israel.
Thank you so much, Laurence. What a pleasure to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That really, Laurence. Conclusion is really what we wanted to stress with this program. Think good and it will be good. Looking in positive direction, going back to move forward. Thank you so much. Thank you. Our next speaker is Avner Franklin, who is the English tour guide for the Gush Katif Museum in Yerushalayim, which has recently reopened for tours. And I highly recommend everyone include it on your itinerary the next time you're in Israel, or if you live in Israel already, to definitely stop in and go through the museum. So Avner, welcome. Can you tell us all about the museum? It's how it was planned and started, and tell us about what goes on there.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be able to be part of this forum. We're now 7:30 at night. You guys in midday. That's the beauty of Am Israel. Any time of the day, you can connect together. And let's start from the beginning. My name is Avner Franklin. Just one thing, Mrs. Adelstein, can I share some things on the screen, please? Can you give me permission? Can't hear you. You're on mute.
Yes, you can. Here's the tech person to tell you how to do it.
Okay.
You know how we assume.
You have to give. I think you have to give me permission to share the screen. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if we're on. If we're sharing. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. You can see it here is the entrance of the Gush Katif Museum in Jerusalem.
Okay. One. Exit. There we are.
Okay. Great. Right. You can see here's the entrance to our museum in Gush Katif, a modest-looking building in the middle of Jerusalem. As I said before, my name is Avner Franklin. I made Aliyah 40 years ago to Jerusalem. I live in the old city with my wife and family. I've been connected to the Gush Katif Museum in Jerusalem for 4 years. I went on to semi-pension, and I decided to contribute to what I felt was very, very close to my heart. I guide in Hebrew and English, and I'm also a coordinator of groups who visit the museum. The museum has been very, very active since it's opened its doors 30 years ago. We have, as you can see, according to the pictures, there's one picture you can see of the, that was turned, it was a rocket that was fired onto Ganei Tal from Gaza in the year 2004 approximately. And by a miracle, there were a lot of miracles in Gaza all the time. You can just read it in a lot of the books. The miracle was that this rocket that went off did not explode. One of the guys took it, ran like anything, and was able to disconnect it and get rid of the danger. Because of that, he turned the rockets into a Chanukiah. You can see there the Chanukiah that we turned it into. And according to the other pictures, you can see the menorah, menorah was taken from the Beit Knesset in Nitzarim, taken down very carefully, brought to the Kotel HaMaravi, near where I live, by the community. We danced with the menorah, and then the menorah eventually ended up in our museum in Gush Katif in Jerusalem. Our idea has been to present the facts of the terrible expulsion of all the 21 established communities within the Gush Katif area 16 years ago, as well as 4 communities in the northern Shomron area, which were also evacuated, also expelled from people who were a part of the community. We're talking about close to 10,000 inhabitants who were expelled at the time in 2005. Now, as far as I know, today in Yehuda v'Shomron, not including Jerusalem, we don't have 10,000 inhabitants. We have 500,000 inhabitants living there, and to do what they could do in Gush Katif, to do it today in Yehuda v'Shomron, I don't think it would be anywhere practical of trying to move all those people out. We have made an uvda, we have made a fact that wherever we live in Israel, Hashem gives us a brocha, and we carry on going, and he gives us a brocha of the land, and we carry on going. We have our facts, and that makes the difference to where we live in. 73 years ago, we came to Israel against all the odds. We established our facts on the ground, and today we can be very, very proud of Medinat Israel, of Eretz Israel, of where we live. And this is the exact message that I give to people who join us in the Gush Katif Museum. We delve into the legacy of Gush Katif and the love of the land of Israel. We have visitors from all walks of life coming to see us. We have yeshiva students, we have religious and secular university and school students from all over the world. We just hosted yesterday, we hosted a group of kids who came on a program for four weeks, and they made sure that part of that program, they came to us. There must have been about 150 kids, came to our museum, and they had a very, very memorable experience with us. We also have soldiers from the army coming in to visit us. We have a lot of Christian groups, believe it or not. We have Christian groups who are lovers of Israel, coming from the USA, amazing amount of people coming from Holland and European countries as well. Unfortunately, like all over the world, we've been hit by COVID-19, and our museums, people visiting our museum have been limited. But now, Baruch Hashem, we've opened up again. I hope in Israel we'll hold the COVID down. It's already going up slightly, but I hope that we'll be able to host all these people over and over again. And we cater for all ages. We cater for older people. We cater for adults. We cater for kids as well. Kids will come. We have place for them to be and to feel at home in the Gush Katif Museum. We, in fact, have had close to 500,000 visitors over the past 13 years, which is phenomenal. Yesterday, because things are getting back to normal again, we were honored by a visit of a senior Likud member of the Knesset by the name of Galit Distal Adbrian. She stated, and I quote, I'll read this, what she said: in a modest building at 5 Sharet Tzedek Street, Jerusalem, stands, as far as I'm concerned, one of the most important places in Israel. She further stated that the Gush Katif Museum in Jerusalem is a type of a permanent monument which testifies to what happened and should not reoccur. She ended her talk to us with the very well-known words, Ashur leYehudi legaresh Yehudi. A Jew should not expel another Jew from anywhere in the land of Israel. In the past, we have had many members of the government, as well as public figures, visiting us. Here we can see Gideon Saar in the picture at the bottom, who today has gone into the coalition with Naftali Bennett. We can see above what was Cohen. He used to be the Minister of Economics in the government under Bibi Netanyahu, and he also came to visit us, standing next to one of the directors of the museum, Shlomo Wasserteil. To the above mentioned, we proudly host expelled citizens from Gush Katif. These people come into our museum. Obviously, they don't pay any entrance fee, and they have settled in their homes eventually after 16 years of hardship, and they tell us the stories, the horrific stories of theirs and their children's experiences in the expulsion. And we learn from these people. At our museum, we merely present the facts. We remember passing through the time zone. Here you can see in this picture the time zone that we have on the wall, going from Avraham Avinu, who stayed in a place called Grar, going all along. We include here Samson the Gibor, the strong man Samson, who lived in Gaza city. We include here King Solomon, who lived in Gush Katif for a while. We include here the famous Israel Niajara, who was a rabbi, who had a very vibrant community in Gaza city. For those who don't know, one of the songs that we sing on Shabbat evening, Yaribon Olam, was a song written by Rav Israel Niajara. We also discussed the modern Gush Katif, where we were very successful in the agricultural industry, as well as turning the desolate area into a Garden of Eden. We came to a place that was totally desolate, and within no time, we were able to get the agricultural industry going. We would put minerals and vitamins into the ground. We would bring down water. We would also have hydroponics, which is growing plants on water, which solves our problem of shmita, where you can have basically plants that are not grown in the ground. And more than that is when HaKadosh Baruch Hu blesses us, he not only blesses our nation, but he blesses the ground that we live in. Lo b'mikre, we say, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, That's the ground that HaKadosh Baruch Hu blesses for us. And we came to Gush Katif with nothing. And within 30 odd years, we changed it into a Garden of Eden. There's a story of an Arab who used to live there. And he said, guys, if you plant a flower here, then I will have hair growing on the palm of my hand. He came back a couple of months later to find a barber who would cut the hair off the palm of his hand, because the chaklaut, the agriculture, was so good. In fact, we have one of the directors of the museum, Shlomo Versatile, who lived in one of the yeshuvim, Ganei Tal, and he used to export every single day geraniums to Holland, to the flower markets in Amsterdam. For some reason, the Dutch people like geraniums, and there was the tremendous flower export every single day going along and making it. We had livelihoods for everyone. People were very happy there. The Arabs were very happy there as well. As a matter of information, the Arabs, while they were there, it's called dukiyum. It's called, being united, doing things together. And basically, the Arabs had to do dukiyum with us. We may not like each other, but if a person wants to work, and he works, and they work there. And just to explain the bracha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the same guy who exported these flowers to Amsterdam had an Arab foreman working for him. This guy knew Dinei Shabbat. He even knew Dinei Shmita, this guy. He knew how to operate the hothouses completely. And in the time when they were told to leave, he turned around, the Balabai turned around and said to this Arab guy, you have been so faithful to me, I'm going to give you all of this for you to run for yourself and to have a livelihood from it. Within 2 months, the whole place fell apart completely. Why? Because we were not in Gush Katif anymore. We did not have the bracha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We see as well in the modern day Gush Katif, where we were very successful in the agricultural industry, and we really, mamash, turned everything in the area from a desolate area into an absolute Garden of Eden with the most beautiful beaches in the world. We could have really, done well there and been good for the Arabs and for us to be able to promote the place. In our museum, we take the mistakes of the past, we apply them to the present and the future to promise ourselves that these mistakes will not reoccur. Although the expulsion is a very, very sad event in our lives, and also in the lives of the people who lived in Gush Katif, visitors become very emotional when we guide these visitors through the museum. But the message we give these people, besides telling them what really happened, was the fact that Am Yisrael carries on, lo b'mikre, not by chance. Our anthem of Israel is Hatikva, where we have hope to carry on doing things. And they come out of the museum hopeful that the people of Israel will continue to flourish and continue to be strong, like we've been up till now for 73 years. I wish to take this opportunity to thank the founders of the museum, Rav Volpe, Shai Geffen, and Shlomo Versatile. Shlomo, by the way, we said, was a person who lived in Ganei Tal, who now lives in Ganei Tal HaChadash, the new Ganei Tal. By the way, all the communities from before have now resettled. A lot of them have gone to Nitzan. Another people have gone to the Ganei Tal, started another Ganei Tal, and people have started all different yeshuvim, and Baruch Hashem, they've come back to what should really be. I'd like to thank the three of them for the initiative and their creative, never-ending ideas, as well as Oded Mizrahi, Oded and I work together, and we are involved in the day-to-day running of the museum.
Sorry, guys, I need to go. Sorry.
Okay, Kol Tov. We do not receive any government assistance. We are a private museum, and we get the money that we get is through activities, and we rely solely on private donations and entrance fees. With ending, I'd like to say, please support our visiting our museum when you come to Yerushalayim. It's near Machane Yehuda. It's on the light rail route, and we'd like to see you there. And thank you for your time. And shalom from Jerusalem.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Very interesting. And the next time I'm in Israel, I will definitely be stepping in. And my daughter who lives in
Gaza. Will
Gaza.
give you VIP treatments.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.